Historically, I remember how companies tried to protect their code, the software the developers wrote for them. And it's still the case today, but there is increasingly more and more software projects that actually open their software code, open completely. Now, imagine how crazy this is, but that's how, for example, Linux was built. Linux as an open source software was built with the community. It's such a huge system that literally one company could hardly develop such a system. One example could be maybe Microsoft that builds a closed system. So I'll just write it here. Microsoft builds a closed system, Microsoft Windows, right? And then the community builds Linux. We could see the difference here. Microsoft has their own proprietary system, Windows. They have never released the source code of Windows. It's closed, it's protected. Only the developers who work at Microsoft can see the source code of Windows. On the contrary, everyone can see the source code of Linux. Everyone can download it. Everyone can see all the files, the whole repository. Everything is out there. Everyone can fork it, can download it, can start a new open source project. But there is only one requirement. So as soon as you use the community-based open source software, you cannot charge others to use it, right? You need to again open source the project you develop based on the open source software, which creates a nice wave. You know, it's like this butterfly effect. So one open source software ignites another open source software, and this is how it all continues. So you could see here, like literally the source code of Linux is out there. You can download it, you can see it, you can see all the history, you can see which file was changed by whom. That's why it is called open source. GitHub is actually one of the online repositories which is used for open source software. So you need to know GitHub. And in one of the videos we talk about GitHub also, so I encourage you to watch that one. So GitHub is an online tool that allows individuals and companies to store and maintain their repositories. And Linux is one of such repositories. But there are just so many projects out there that are built as open source software. So different contributors get together and develop the software together, which is again great for recruitment. You as recruiters should look for developers who contribute in open source development, because usually open source development is developed in a modern fashion. Usually developers who contribute in open source try to use all the best practices, and they polish their code, and they use unit tests and whatever is out there to help them write beautiful code. They usually adopt it because they also see this form of pride, like, hey, I contribute to this open source project, so I want my code to look as good as possible, as great as I can write it at the moment in time. And then other contributors come and give feedback through code reviews. So this is how the community also helps each other. So open source software is great. We have, for example, Android as an open source software, right? So I'll just type it here, Android or Chrome OS, or what else? For example, React. Angular, Vue, like all these frameworks are open source, which is great because it allows the whole community to get together and then build great software together. So open source, really, really cool. So you guys, whenever you see a job description like this one, which highlights the fact that we are looking for software engineers who are participating in the open source community, then you should know, hey, they're looking for someone who really codes because he or she loves it. People who contribute in open source usually do it in their free time, over the weekends or in the evenings. So these guys are really passionate coders. They are the passionate software engineers that everyone wants to hire. Like usually they have more projects they can handle. In one of the videos we also look at how can you look through a repository or a profile on GitHub and derive some value from it. Like how can you recognize if a developer contributes in open source or not? How can you separate those who just commit one line of code to some popular repository? How can you recognize them from someone who spends weeks or months developing for some popular or even less popular open source repository? So with that, I'll wrap it up here. Open source is great. You guys as recruiters should always strive for getting connected to people who contribute to open source, and those are usually great if we can generalize this way. So that's why I think it's important to even cover this topic at GeekRecruiter. And I encourage you to share this video, like it if you like it, share it with your friends and colleagues, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you get the next videos that will help you to become a great technical recruiter.